So our first unit is kind of like an intro to algebra. All these things are stuff you've been doing for since probably elementary school. Nothing new, but just want to brush up on some math skills, math facts. A lot of today is more so, yes, operations, but more so dealing with positives and negatives. It's a real basic thing. So the big four operations: adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. A couple notes about multiplying. There are lots of symbols for multiplication, right? There's the X, there's the asterisk or the star, and even parentheses. So I want us to make a note for multiplication that if we see 3 and then parentheses 2, that really means 3 times 2, which is 6. Okay, so the parentheses there, if there's a number in front of them, that implies multiplication, almost like an invisible operation. Already, I love what I'm seeing. You all, if I write something down, that means that you should write that as well. Good job picking up on that. Then division. Okay, a lot of us are familiar with the division symbol. Note that we can also, when we write something as a fraction, that is also division. So this part is, it's hard to type it like that. A over B or A divided by B. All fractions are simply division products. All right. Today we're going to focus on the sign of the result, not necessarily the math. For example, I don't care that 3 times 2 is 6. What we're more going to focus on is the result positive or negative. Here's why. You will be able to use a calculator on all the work and all the stuff. A lot of times, we use the calculators, but we don't put too much thought into what should the result look like. That needs to be a part of us using calculators. We can't just trust that whatever we put in is correct. We make mistakes. And furthermore, we should always be thinking about when I do this multiplication, addition, subtraction, whatever it might be, is the result positive or negative? Okay, so we always want to understand why we get the result, expect or have an idea as to what should the results be. Just a reminder that multiplying and division follow the same rules for operations because they are, I would say, equivalent operations. I think the better word for that would be inverse operations, right? Multiplying undoes division, division undoes multiplication. So whatever we discover for multiplication, that'll also be true for division. And here's what we're going to take note of: multiplication. Multiplying real numbers. Okay, this is just basically the definition of multiplication. Remember that multiplication is really just addition. If I have 4 times 3, that's 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. Or in other words, think of the first number as the number of groups and the second number as what's in each group. So this is 4 groups of 3. 4 groups of 3 means we have 12 different things. 6 groups of 5. Okay, 6 groups of 5 means that we have 30 different objects, things in that set. All right, so that's just the basic definition of multiplication. And again, here's what we're focusing on today. When we have a positive number times another positive number, the result is going to be positive. That's why we care about today. Positive, positive. Typically, we don't see with the sign when it's just a positive and a positive. Again, I do not care about the actual fact. We will have a lesson when we do that. Next, we have a positive times negative. One's going to be negative. Okay, if we have one negative sign, the result will always end up being negative. Now, again, if I need a calculator for this, that is okay. Okay, some of you can multiply 3 times negative 7 really quick. Some of you have to think about it. Some of you are like, you know what, that's something I've struggled with my whole life. You can use a calculator, but one thing I'm thinking about before I go to the calculator, no matter what I plug in, I know the result needs to be negative, right? That's not something we need a calculator to tell us. That's something that, based on what we know about positives and negatives, we need to have memorized, okay, or just know that property. All right, just building on that, okay, the commutative property basically means that order does not matter. Just make a quick note of that. With multiplication, order doesn't matter, right? 3 times 2 is the same thing as 2 times 3. A times B is the same thing as B times A. So a negative times a positive is the same thing as a positive times a negative. And thus, thus the result of all of these will also be negative. So basically, if we have an odd number of negatives, the result is going to be negative when multiplying and dividing. Even number of negatives are going to come up with more. Now, what happens when we multiply more than just two numbers? How do we carry out those operations? Okay, we're going to just work with too small. There we go. Okay, we're going to just work with any two numbers at once and then start a new problem. What does that describe? Well, if I have 3 times negative 2 times 8, and I'm going to actually multiply these out. To do this multiplication, I'm going to do 3 times negative 2 to start. That result is negative 6. Then we're going to take that answer and multiply it by the remaining number of 8. So negative 6 times 8 is negative 48. For ending with a negative. With this next one, let's focus more on the signs, not necessarily the facts. The first two numbers, when I multiply them together, negative 1 times negative 10. A negative times a negative is a positive. Two negatives come together to form a positive. Then I've got a positive number times another positive number. And number, another positive number. And again, some of you are really good with these facts and don't need to necessarily work it out. You can just look at it and say, yeah, positive or negative. For this last one, another way to figure out if it's positive or negative is to count how many negatives you see. It's an even number of negatives, they all form a positive. It's an odd number, the end result will always be negative. So in this last example, I see 1, 2, 4 negatives. Since that's an even number, I know for a fact I'm going to end with this being a positive. Now, to work that out kind of in steps, negative 4 times negative 8 is a positive number. Negative 11 times negative 7 is a positive number. Then those two positives will get multiplied by each other, and a positive times a positive is still positive. Once you're done, go flip this page over. We're going to skip. Let's not skip. Negative times a negative, we kind of touched on this. I don't know why this whole table's in here, but negative times a negative ends up being a positive. Now, again, what I like to think about is those negatives come together and they can form a positive sign, right? There's lines, that's when we need to form a positive sign. Negative, negative is a positive. Right, and then just remember that the rules for division are the same as multiplication. This really 8 divided by 2, positive divided by a positive, a positive. Something positive. Negative 2 divided by negative 2, negative divided by negative, a positive. 10 divided by negative 10, 1 negative, so number of negatives means negative. Negative 15 divided by 3, negative divided by positive. Okay. Last thing we have are just reminders about addition and subtraction. This is actually where I see most mistakes. We start mixing addition and subtraction with negatives, where not only do I see these mistakes in this class, but I see these mistakes even in like senior make these mistakes. And I make these mistakes from time to time. But if we slow down and think about all of the signs and simplify some things, it makes it limited opportunities to make mistakes. So first off, positive number plus another positive number, right? That's still going to be positive. I like to think about this more as it becomes more positive. So 3 plus 5, it becomes more positive, that's positive 8. 2 plus 7, more positive, positive 9. 6 minus negative 8, we have negatives. And another way to think about this is 6 and then a minus 1 times negative 8. Well, those negatives multiply together to become positive. So it's really 6 plus 8. So 2 negatives come together to form a positive. Thus, the result here is positive. All right, negative plus negative. It's going to stay negative, and this is where it gets a lot of. So let's say when we have a negative plus negative, it becomes more negative. Meaning the number's going to grow, but it grows in a negative, right? Negative 3 plus negative 5, that's negative 8. It's a bigger negative number. So it stays as negative. Negative 2 plus negative 7, it's negative 9, that's more negative. Negative 6 minus 8, that can also be written as negative 6 plus negative 8, if that helps you. Most of the time, if we have like these consecutive operations, we want to write so we're just using the exact operation we're using, which is in fact subtraction. And that result is more negative. All right, really important property, the additive inverse property of addition, meaning equal number now negative, that equals 0. Okay, so 5 plus negative 5, 0. Negative 5 plus 5, 0. 0 does not have a sign. It is neither positive or negative. So you need to explicitly say when you're determining whether or not it's positive or negative, 0 you have to just 0 because it's neither positive or negative. And then once we start mixing positives and negatives, let's write that it depends. It depends on what's bigger, the positive or negative number. So it depends on which is bigger. Negative 3 plus 5, the 5 is bigger and positive, and thus, when we do that addition, the result should be positive. 2 plus negative 7, the negative is bigger, and thus, the result should be negative. Negative 6 plus 8, the positive is bigger, so the result is positive. All right, 2 more quick things. I'll let you go on the homework. Like I said, today's real basic. I promise we will pick it up. Oh my gosh, is this what this class is about? These are just the basics. We're starting off easy. Whole first unit should be fairly straightforward. And these are all good things for us to brush up on. Okay, working with double signs. We've kind of seen these in some of the notes already. I've touched on these, but let's just explicitly go over it. Typically, it's easier to simplify your double signs in the beginning of a problem. If you see something like 7 minus negative 4 or 8 plus negative 5, really narrowing down, are we actually adding or subtracting? So 7 minus negative 4, that really means 7 plus 4. Those two negatives come together, form an addition sign. 8 plus negative 5. Okay, since we have one negative there, that negative kind of takes over, and so this is really 8 minus 5. That's really subtraction. And then the last thing, what if we are adding and subtracting more than 2 numbers? Again, always take care of those double signs first, and then work left to right. Yes, we have order of operations, and in order of operations, so PEMDAS addition comes first. but we can just simply work left to right. The order actually does not matter. So if I have 6 plus -4, that really means 6 minus 4, and then minus 12. And over here, -7 minus -13 really means -7 plus 13. Minus 2, then plus 1. Now, for us to figure out the sign of this, we actually have to do some addition or subtraction. So 6 minus 4, that's 2. 2 minus 12 is -10. That's the result here is negative. -7 plus 13 is 6. We still have minus 2 and plus 1. 6 minus 2 is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5.